night of February 3rd was supposed to be quiet. That's why I remember it so clearly. I had worked dispatch for just over 6 years at that point. County-level emergency communications, mid-sized city, nothing unusual. February nights were the slowest. No holidays, no events, cold enough that people stayed inside. The kind of shift where you measure time by coffee refills and log entries. I signed in at 10:58 p.m. Night shift officially started at 11. There were 3 of us on the floor. Me, another dispatcher handling fire and EMS, and a supervisor in the back office finishing paperwork. By 12:30 a.m. it was just me. The others rotated out on staggered schedules. That wasn't unusual either. What was unusual started at 1:42 a.m. It wasn't a call. It was the absence of one. On our system, every line has a state: ringing, active, on hold, disconnected. The dashboard is something you learn to read without really looking, the way you read traffic signals while driving. Line 7 was active. No ring. No call timer counting up. Just active. That alone wasn't impossible. Sometimes callers stayed silent. Sometimes pocket dials connected and never dropped. Usually, though, there was something: background noise, breathing, wind, a radio playing. I clicked into it. 911, what's your emergency? Nothing. I waited. 911, can you hear me? Still nothing. Not even static. I checked the call details. Incoming trunk, local. No number displayed. That happens occasionally with older landlines or blocked VoIP calls. I logged it as an open line and stayed connected. At 1:47 a.m., the call duration counter still hadn't started. That's when I noticed something was off. The system didn't think the call had started. Line state, active. Call duration. That dash meant the timer hadn't initialized, which meant the system believed the line was in use, but not connected through the normal process. I muted my mic and listened harder. There was no sound at all. Not even the faint digital hiss you usually hear on a dead line. It was like listening to nothing through headphones. At 1:55 a.m. I tried to disconnect it. The button didn't respond. I tried again. Nothing. I flagged my supervisor, who came out of the office looking annoyed more than concerned. He leaned over my shoulder, squinted at the screen. "That's weird," he said. "Put it on hold." I tried. The line stayed active. At 2:01 a.m., the system logged the call as priority hold. Neither of us did that. We checked the originating console ID. The call was showing as routed internally. That didn't make sense. Internal calls couldn't route to emergency trunks. And even if they could, they would show an extension. This didn't. At 2:07 a.m., my supervisor called IT. While we waited, the call stayed open. No noise. No drop. No change. At 2:14 a.m., the supervisor left to check something in the back office. That's when the breathing started. It was faint. Almost below perception. I didn't notice it at first, not consciously. Just a subtle pressure change in my ears, like when someone is standing closer than you expect. I leaned forward. The breathing wasn't rhythmic. It wasn't panicked or labored. It sounded tired. Slow inhale. Slow exhale. I spoke. "Sir, if you can hear me, please respond." The breathing paused, then continued. I felt my stomach tighten. I've taken silent calls before. People in danger sometimes can't speak. But there's usually context. A scuffle. Background noise. A sense of urgency. This felt deliberate. At 2:19 a.m., I dispatched a welfare check using the trace location the system should have provided. There was none. The location field was blank. Not unknown. Not error. Blank. At 2:23 a.m. IT called back. They asked me to read out the call metadata. When I told them the call had no number, no duration, and an internal routing flag, they went quiet. Then they asked me something strange. "Is anyone logged into Console 4? Console 4 was the position directly to my left. It had been unstaffed since midnight. I looked. The chair was empty. Headset docked. Screen asleep. "No," I said. There was a pause. "Because the system thinks Console 4 initiated the call." I laughed reflexively. Not because it was funny, because it didn't fit. "That's not possible," I said. "I know," the IT tech replied. "But that's what it says." At 2:31 a.m., the breathing got louder. Not closer. Just clearer. I realized then that it wasn't coming through the line. It was coming with it. As if the silence itself carried it. I muted the line. The breathing continued. I unmuted. Still there. My supervisor returned, pale now, holding a printed access log. He didn't say anything at first. Just slid the paper across the desk. At 1:41 a.m., 1 minute before the line went active, there was a login recorded. Console 4. User ID, unknown. Authentication, successful. No badge. No password entry. No override logged. Just, successful. At 2:38 a.m. the breathing stopped. The line stayed open. At 2:42 a.m. the system logged a voice event. That's what we call it when audio is detected above threshold. I hadn't heard a voice. The log insisted otherwise. At 2:43 a.m., text appeared in the incident notes field. I didn't type it. Neither did my supervisor. Still here. Lowercase. No punctuation. IT disconnected the trunk remotely at 2:46 a.m. The line finally dropped. Console 4 logged out at the same moment. No one spoke for a long time after that. Morning shift arrived at 6. By then everything looked normal. The incident report classified it as a system routing anomaly. The access log was amended later that day. The unknown login was removed, replaced with a corrupted entry marker. Console 4 was reimaged. No hardware issues were found. No further calls came in that night. But every February since, on the night of the 3rd, between 1:40 and 2:50 a.m., Line 7 briefly changes state. Not to active, just to busy. No call, no record. And one more thing I never put in the report. At 2:43 a.m., when the text appeared on the screen, the cursor blinked once afterward, as if whoever typed it was still there, waiting. I didn't work security because I liked confrontation. I worked security because I liked systems. Cameras made sense. Access logs made sense. Motion sensors made sense. People didn't always, but buildings usually did. They behaved in predictable ways. Power went up when lights were on. Motion alerts triggered when something crossed a threshold. Badge logs matched footage. February 11th was the night those things stopped lining up. I was contracted as an overnight security analyst for a corporate property group that managed several office buildings downtown. My job wasn't to patrol, it was to watch. 14 buildings, all fed into one monitoring room, all quiet after midnight. Most nights, nothing happened. When something did, it was usually a cleaning crew badge or a delivery truck triggering a motion sensor it shouldn't have. The building that mattered that night was Building C. 12 floors. Mid-2000s construction. Tech offices, accounting firms, one legal practice. Fully occupied during the day. Completely empty at night except for cleaning crews, who worked floors 1 through 6 and were logged out by 1 a.m. At 12:58 a.m., the cleaning crew logged out as expected. At 1:04 a.m., Floor 9 stopped reporting motion. Not unusual by itself. Floors go quiet. What was unusual was everything else. At 1:15 a.m., power consumption on Floor 9 remained steady. Lights on. HVAC cycling. Bathroom exhaust running intermittently. It matched daytime baseline within 5%. I assumed someone had stayed late and forgotten to badge out. I pulled up the cameras. Floor 9 was empty. Hallways clear. Offices dark but lit enough to see. No movement. No flicker. No shadows. I watched for 5 minutes. Nothing moved. At 1:22 a.m. I checked the badge logs. No entries. No exits. No tailgates. I flagged it internally as possible sensor error and kept watching. At 1:41 a.m., Floor 9 water usage spiked. Just briefly. A toilet flush pattern. That caught my attention. I zoomed in on the restrooms. Both were empty. No stalls closed. No sinks running. No motion alerts triggered. Motion sensors were mounted on the ceiling. They should have picked up something. They hadn't. I documented the discrepancy and called the on-call facilities manager. He didn't answer. Straight to voicemail. At 1:56 a.m., the elevator log showed a stop at Floor 9. No call button press logged. The doors opened for 12 seconds. Then closed. The camera inside the elevator showed an empty car. No one entered. No one exited. I rewound it 3 times. Same result. At 2:03 a.m. I started feeling watched. Not in a dramatic way. Just the awareness that I was paying attention to something that wasn't paying attention back. I switched camera angles, different lenses, different compression feeds. Still nothing. At 2:17 a.m., floor 9 HVAC demand increased slightly, as if more bodies were present. I stood up and walked closer to the monitors. The power usage graph wasn't spiking randomly. It was behaving normally, the way it would if people were working late. Minor fluctuations, predictable cycles. I pulled up historical data. Every February the same thing happened. February 9th, February 11th, February 14th. Always between 1 o'clock and 3 a.m. Floor 9. Normal occupancy patterns. Zero motion alerts. I felt cold then, in that slow way where your body realizes something before your mind does. I checked last year's footage. Same thing. Same empty hallways. Same power draw. At 2:29 a.m., the camera on the east hallway glitched. Just for a frame. In that frame, the hallway looked different. Not occupied. Just altered. Chairs slightly out of alignment. A door opened that had been closed in every other frame. The next frame snapped back to normal. I rewound. The frame was still there. I isolated it. Enhanced it. The chairs weren't out of place. They were arranged, facing inward, toward the center of the hallway. I didn't like that. At 2:34 a.m., the system generated an automated occupancy estimate. Floor 9, 23 persons. That feature was deprecated. It hadn't been accurate enough to keep. It wasn't supposed to run. I checked the camera feeds again. Still empty. No shadows. No reflections. No movement. At 2:41 a.m., the restroom lights turned off. Then on again. No motion alerts. At 2:47 a.m., the fire exit stairwell camera finally triggered motion. I leaned forward, heart thudding. The camera showed the stairwell door opening. No one came through. The door closed. I radioed the mobile patrol unit. Asked them to do an interior check of Building C. They arrived at 3:06 a.m. I watched their body cams as they entered. Floors 1 through 8 were normal. When they reached floor 9, their radio static increased. Not enough to lose signal. Just enough to distort voices. The lead officer stopped. He turned slowly in place, camera panning. "Control," he said, "this floor feels occupied." I asked him what he meant. He hesitated. "Lights are on," he said. "Air's warm. Smells like coffee." I watched his camera. The hallway was empty. Chairs were aligned normally. Doors closed. At 3:12 a.m. his camera skipped frames. When it resumed, he was standing at the other end of the hallway. He hadn't walked there. He didn't react. "Did you move?" I asked. "Boss, I don't think so," he said. His partner said nothing. At 3:18 a.m., both officers exited the building. Their report stated, "No occupants found. No anomalies observed." They wouldn't meet my eyes when they returned the keys. At 3:27 a.m., floor 9 power usage dropped to 0. Lights off. HVAC idle. Motion sensors resumed normal operation. By morning, everything looked fine. Facilities blamed a sensor calibration issue. IT blamed a software bug. The occupancy estimate was scrubbed from the logs. I kept copies. Every February 11th since I checked Building C. Floor 9 still does it. Same hours. Same patterns. No motion. Normal use. Last year, the estimated occupancy rose to 24. No one has ever reported missing time. No one has ever claimed they stayed late. But there's one thing I noticed recently. In the glitch frame from this year, just one frame again, there's something new. A reflection in the glass of a closed office door. Camera lens. Pointed back down the hallway. At the exact height of the cameras watching it. As if something on that floor is finally paying attention to us. February nights are always quiet in the city, but the server rooms never sleep. I've worked in IT for over 7 years, overseeing network and infrastructure maintenance for a series of corporate buildings. By 11 p.m., the streets are empty, elevators stop running, and the offices are dark. Everything seems at peace, except the servers. That night, February 19th, it started like any other. Routine checks, system logs, temperature readings. The building had a dedicated server room on the sublevel. Locked, alarmed, motion sensors, cameras, environmental controls. Everything standard. Everything automated. I arrived for my overnight audit at 11:02 p.m. The access logs indicated no one had entered the building after 8 p.m. The camera feed confirmed the lobby was empty. Security guards patrols past the main floor, nothing unusual. I swiped my badge to access the server room. The door unlocked, lights flicked on, air conditioning hummed steady. Everything normal. By 11:17 p.m., I noticed the first anomaly. The main server rack indicated power usage higher than usual. Not a minor fluctuation, roughly 20% higher than baseline for an unoccupied night. I double-checked the logs. No scheduled tasks. No updates running. No remote connections. Nothing to account for the spike. I walked along the racks. Temperature sensors were normal. No unusual vibrations. Nothing on the cameras. Yet the power meters kept creeping upward. At 11:24 p.m., I checked the security feed from the server room hallway. Empty. But on the wall monitor, a small flicker, like a shadow, appeared in the far corner. Just one frame. I rewound. Nothing there. I shrugged it off. Cameras occasionally glitch. By 11:39 p.m., the servers were now reporting network traffic originating from an internal terminal that wasn't assigned to any user. No login, no badge, no authentication. Just traffic. Routine, calm, almost deliberate. I traced the connection. It led to a workstation in the corner of the server room. Empty. Screen locked. Keyboard untouched. Mouse still. At 11:46 p.m., the UPS system started cycling slightly. Not an alert, just tiny fluctuations in load, like something heavy was moving from one rack to another. I left the room to check the corridor cameras. Nothing. Hallway empty. Even the maintenance closet showed no sign of occupancy. By midnight, I was uneasy. The monitors in the server room were behaving strangely. Applications opening and closing by themselves. Logs refreshing, highlighting lines I hadn't selected. Commands entered, then deleted, leaving only timestamps and question marks. At 12:07 a.m. I heard it, a soft tapping, rhythmic, echoing through the server room vents. Not loud enough to trigger my eardrum reflex, but distinct. Tap, 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 pause, tap. I checked the vents. Clean, secure. No airflow issues. Nothing should have produced the sound. At 12:15 a.m., the motion sensors in the server room registered movement. No alarms. No indication on the cameras. Just motion detected, sub-level server room in the logs. I froze. I was alone. The sensor logs matched nothing on camera. At 12:23 a.m., the network traffic increased dramatically. Packets moving between servers at unusual rates. Again, originating from a terminal not assigned to any user. I initiated a remote shutdown to isolate the system. The servers powered down in sequence. All normal. Then the UPS hum continued. Lights flickered. The power meters slowly climbed again, despite the racks being off. I double-checked the access logs. My badge swipe at 11:02 p.m. remained the only entry. No one else. At 12:38 a.m. the cameras glitched. One frame repeated over and over. A frozen image of the server room, lights on, racks humming. Then in the last frame before normal feed resumed, a figure appeared, tall, blurred, standing still in the far corner. I froze the image. No identifying features. No shadow. Nothing else in the room should have been there. By 12:47 a.m., all logs normalized. Power usage returned to baseline. UPS idle. No packets moving. Terminal inactive. Motion sensors quiet. Cameras normal. I walked out. The building was still. The lobby empty. No one on patrol. I filed the incident. IT called it a sensor and logging anomaly. Security said camera glitch. Facilities checked the UPS and found no irregularities. The next day, the monitoring software reported the server room had never been powered off that night. The log indicated continuous activity from 11:02 p.m. to 5 a.m., the entire shift, even though the racks had been shut down during my visit. I've audited this building dozens of times before. Never anything like this. Every February 19th since, the server room reports minor anomalies. Power spikes, motion triggers, ghost packets, glitched frames on camera feeds, but no one ever finds anything in person. I don't enter the server room after midnight anymore. Yet I check the logs, and every year I notice the same pattern. Activity recorded while the room is empty. Racks humming. Motion detected. Systems behaving as if someone, or something, is inside moving deliberately. The last entry from this year's audit read, server room active. No personnel detected. Activity continues. I shut my laptop and walked home. And I still wonder if the systems are running on their own, who or what is inside.